Oh, hello, Star Wars fans. Hey, there are 337 days until Christmas 2021, and it's good to see you all here. I saw Gray. You made it in first. Welcome. And we've got some of our regulars. Dark Winter, thanks for joining. Gaming Vulture. Hey, not for sure. No, or you say not first, but not the last either. Reefer Man, good to have you here. And Jonathan Velasquez. Good to see you. And for those of you that didn't know, as I didn't either until yesterday, Jonathan has his very own YouTube channel. Who knew? It's a surprise. So if you haven't found his channel, go out there and sub to Jonathan Velasquez as well. As a member of the community and somebody we want to support. So today we're going to jump into hyperspace a little bit, and we're going to be on our regular Thursday chats with Imagic Maker from Reimagining Star Wars. And this subject came up because yesterday Thor Skywalker did a video, and there's been some other discussions going on due to the release of Light of the Jedi from the High Republic novel. And the whole premise of that novel is sort of based on hyperspace and some things that happen in hyperspace. So I'll put up a spoiler warning because we are going to be delving into some key points and some quotes actually from the novel. And if you haven't read it, you don't want any spoilers, come back and check us out after you read the book. But we're not gonna give away the whole book. We're just gonna talk about the hyperspace stuff. So I just saw Reefer Man. 50 pages left. You'll watch it later. I appreciate that. So go finish the book. The last 50 pages are good page turners as well. So. And if you've not followed me on Twitter, you're not familiar, I gave the book overall a rating of a B+. I thought the first part one, was a solid B for me. There's a lot of character introductions, kind of tough to follow all that. But then part two, I gave a C, just because for me it was a slow page turner. It didn't really keep me engaged. Didn't keep me flipping the pages and in the content. And then part three, I gave a solid A. I blew through those last bit very, very quickly. And it sets up the next book really, really well. You're like anxious to go open it to find out what's happening next. So, and I gave a little bit higher weighting to the third part because how you feel about something when you're done contributes a lot to it, and that last part really helps with that. So just a couple other hellos. I just saw Sleeping Collectibles. Hello, welcome. Glad to have you here. Damien, good to have you here again as a regular to the show. And XR Coon made it. Good to have you here, friend. And of course, Trinity from Second Street Marvel. He's been deep into the Marvel stuff with the WandaVision stuff, and I know there's a big thing coming on. So Gray. It's taken me forever because I can't get into it. The Nile are kind of boring and trope. And again, I love, if you guys don't know, Gray uses her voice to text a lot. And I love what her voice to text does to her. And for me, it's pure entertainment. So I like the boring in there. So that's great. So with us, as usual, on Thursdays, we have a Magic Maker. So hello there.
Hello there. Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing today? So, yes, once again, we're back at this at the question of hyperspace. This is not the first time. This is a repeated offender within Star Wars.
I like how you put that, repeat offender. We're gonna use some quotes from the movies as well as the book because there's some content in here that that kind of sets the stage and it kind of opens up the discussion. And of course, when we start to talk about hyperspace travel, one of the first things that everybody remembers is from A New Hope, right? So it's when Han Solo says, "Traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops, boy." Right. So that quote here is one of the first things we all remember. But I thought it'd be good to start with first of all, the definition. What is hyperspace? When we're talking Star Wars, and Star Wars isn't real good at keeping rules, as you mentioned. It's a frequent offender. So what is hyperspace? And I know Imagic Maker, you did a video where you got deep into the details. Let's not do that, but can you give us a little bit of a summary? Muted or gone? Muted.
Oh.
There you go.
I guess I should probably take it off mute before I start talking. As the definition you have up on the screen, which is what is hyperspace. It's an alternate dimension. I've always considered it a higher dimension. That's why it's hyperspace, above space.
Yeah.
And so that has allowed you to travel these distances, in real space by not actually traveling the real distances in hyperspace. So somehow or another, the spatial dimensions are changed inside of hyperspace, and it allows you. But there's lots of little aspects of it, like mass shadow and stuff like that affect it. But I mean, it's effectively you're going into a different dimension that lets you break the light barrier, as it were, so that you can travel faster than the speed of light.
Yeah, and Will Morgan, hello, and XR yes, Thor did a video on it, and that's what prompted a Magic Maker and I to bring up the topic today as well. Yeah, and it says traveling at or faster than the speed of light, and so there's some good quotes. We're going to jump into some quotes because I think putting some Star Wars context around it both reveals what it is and why it's a frequent offender of continuity within Star Wars. So we already talked about the Han Solo quote, but the other real interesting thing that happened with hyperspace was in Star Wars Rebels. And in Rebels, Purrgil, the space whales, right? If for any of you that haven't seen Purrgil, these are the Purrgil, right? The space whales. These guys here, they can hyperspace travel naturally. They have the ability to just jump into hyperspace and travel hyperspace lanes. So, which is interesting because they do it using not an engine or any kind of space warping like you would in Star Trek, right? This is actually just Purrgil. They're able to jump into that other dimension, right?
Right, and they do consume fuel. That's kind of the interesting thing. The things that ships use for fuel. I mean, there's an episode in Rebels where they're actually eating or consuming the fuel. I guess you could say they're sucking it in or something like that. As they fly down through it. It's really interesting. They're an interesting creature. Do you think we'll see Purrgil in real life action Purrgil in the Ahsoka series?
Oh, I don't know. I know it. You get see what look exactly like Purrgil in real life or in a live action, not real life. Live action in the Netflix series, the space one that's a reboot of the television show. Oh shoot! Why did I just go blank on it?
Oh well, we'll figure that later.
Yeah. In the second season, there are space whales in there, big time. And the second I saw them, I was like, "Oh my goodness!" They put Purrgil in there. That's straight out of Star Wars. And they put it in there, and it's going to make me crazy until I remember what the name of the show is.
They're kind of whale squids. Maybe we call them squales.
There it is. Will got it. Lost in Space. Yeah.
Oh.
Lost in Space season 2 has live action space whales, and they've actually pulled it off really, really well. Now, their space whales didn't jump into hyperspace,
Right.
and not on screen. I don't know, maybe they are Purgle, maybe they could, but they didn't do it on screen. But that was it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. Crossover. They're lost in space in the Star Wars universe.
that's
Star Wars Galaxy.
It's really good. If you haven't watched that on Netflix, it's a pretty good show, Lost in Space. And again, season 2 does feature those whales, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they rewrite the purpose of the robot, and it's really interesting.
Oh yeah, it's really good. It's really good. So if we go on, so Light of the Jedi, and this is why I put the spoiler warnings up. I think most people are familiar. The premise of Light of the Jedi, or the big thing that happens, is there's a hyperspace incident that causes a ship to break up and the parts to go flying out into the Hetzel system. Is pretty much the first system that it impacts, and then it hits some others. Oh no, Gray just gave me some terrible news. Look at that, it got canceled. That makes me sad. I hadn't seen that it hadn't been canceled because it was so good. I was just waiting for them to release a third series. Spencer, hello. So in Light of the Jedi, they have this hyperspace incident, and a ship crashes. It breaks apart, and pieces go flying out. And as they come out, it describes them as coming out the velocity near light speed. It whipped out of hyperspace like a red hot pellet fired from a slug thrower. Right? That's oh, Spencer just finished it this morning. Very good. So and then they mentioned this other piece, and I put this quote in here because I think it may come into play in how they did the Holdo maneuver in The Last Jedi. Not the Holdo maneuvers necessarily, but the hyperspace tracking. It says, and this came up related to Thor Skywalker's video, individual hyperspace field emitters linked to the mothership's navigation propulsion. So if you've got several ships traveling through hyperspace together, they're using the field emitters linked together to help them with the navigation propulsion. And Thor brought up the point where sometimes when you see ships come out of hyperspace, they come to a standstill like instantly. And sometimes they're moving at a pretty good velocity. And we see here in Light of the Jedi, when these pieces come out, apparently they don't have the field emitters or whatever, the dampeners or whatever it might need to adjust the speed once they hit real space, and they come out right at the speed of light, or just under. So I thought it was interesting they talk about these field emitters because Thor had talked about, okay, if you're traveling through hyperspace and somebody stops really fast in front of you, how do you not, ram into them? And that's how they accounted for it in the book. And then there's a couple other quotes I wanted to bring up. So this comes from Velas Santeca. So most of us are familiar with another member of the Santeca family who comes a bit later, but this is Velas Santeca, and he says hyperspace is not like real space. Once a ship or anything else enters it, there's no way to encounter anything. It's a bubble of space-time that nothing else can interact with, because each lane is, as far as we can tell, its own distinct plane of existence. So there's a little bit of trying to figure out what hyperspace is about. And this was the Santecas. They were considered to be the know-it-alls, the premier light hyperspace navigators of the time. And this was their understanding, that it was a bubble of space-time that nothing else could interact with. And when you entered into it, you had your very own bubble. But then the problem with that is the very first thing that happened, the Nihil ship moved across that hyperspace lane. So they had these tunnels that they kept using throughout the book. And they were also using a member of the Santeca family to help them create these lanes, and they kept getting these lanes from, and then they had engines that were all tied together so that they could be controlled from a central point. And that comes to be a big problem when you don't have necessarily control of your engines, and the engines can be used to direct your ship wherever somebody else wants you to go. But here it says the Nile ship was moving across hyperspace at a right angle to the Legacy run. That was the ship that broke apart. It was running at a right angle with a strange red and gold turbulence rippling in its wake. So that's what caused the whole thing, is these tunnels, these lanes that the Nile were creating using one of the Santeca families in these engines that they had. And as they created these little temporary lanes, then they intersected with the Legacy run. And again, this is, spoiler, it was not a purposeful collision that they set up, but once you find out that you can do it, there's the potential to purposely do it in the future. And so there was a big concern about how you control hyperspace if people can intersect with your little lane of existence, right? So that's the quotes that I pulled from the book, and what I think jumps us off into the discussion. What say you?
Right. So there has to be some assumption that if the Purgle had already established themselves as a problem, they were a problem before the Nile, right?
Yep.
So that should have been known that people ran into Purgle intersecting their because the Purgle have existed throughout the galaxy far before the Nile did.
Yeah, right. So that quote that we got from Santeca about it being a bit of a bubble of space time that nothing else can interact with is probably more of a selling point, where they're selling these hyperspace lanes and they want to sell that it's safe. Meanwhile, people are like, well, but my cousin one time smashed into one, and I lost more than one friend that way. Harrison Dula was saying it in Rebels. So if that had been happening all along, every now and then somebody just crashes into a space whale, then the comment here by Velas Santeca is got a little bit of spin to it, right?
No, absolutely. And then so now the Nile discovering that they can do that. It's not the first time that it's happened. And so if the dampers, if it destroys your ship, and every time it destroys your ship, you have you have one of these instances where things are leaving space at near the speed of light, creating bullets, creating all these problems in real space. All right. Don't you think that would be well known?
Well, I don't know about well known, but it would be known.
No. I mean, all right. I lost more than one friend this way.
Yeah,
that implies more than one incident.
Oh, sure.
And that's in the course of one person's lifetime.
That's true.
All right.
That's true.
So if that is the case, and every time this happens, or let's say even 50% of the time it happens, these components from ships come flying out near the speed of light and create problems. All right. Don't you think that would people would be like, don't stop flying in hyperspace. You're destroying the worlds. If every time, if 50%, if every time you had a plane crash, it meant that some town somewhere was being destroyed.
Right.
There would be serious safeguards against people flying.
Yeah, and I mean, even in the book, they shut down the hyperspace lanes while they're trying to figure out, what happened. But you raise a point I hadn't really thought of. If if you crash, if a particle crashes into your ship, what happens to your ship? Does it get broken apart and then the pieces go flying out, just like we did in Lie of the Jedi, right?
Right. I mean, it seems that would be the same. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but I mean, it seems that way. I mean, it's a logical jump. I mean, the issue that I have, I don't have a problem with him using, hyperspace. It's just the problem is that their magic has it's a magic, but magic typically has some consistency. Even wishes have rules typically,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a logic process. I don't mind your logic not comporting with, reality as we see it. I mean, it's make believe. It shouldn't have to. Right. The problem is that you're whatever you decide for the logic inside your story needs to remain the same. That's the issue at hand.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, hyperspace is a frequent violator of this in a repeated. I don't know how frequent, but repeated.
It's a repeat offender.
It's a repeat offender because distances, times, things like that are completely inconsistent with travel in real space. Light speed travel or hyperspace travel. I know there are contrived things that come up with different engine types that meaning they move at different speeds through hyperspace. Right? Some travel much faster than others.
Right.
If you've got a Type 4 or a Type 3,
right.
Whatever the case.
Past light speed.
All right. Right. Yeah, that's right. So the more they try to put rules around it, the more it becomes problematic.
Well, no, it's not that they try to put rules around it. They just ignore any rules that have occurred before it. And in order, all right. So they use contrivance and convenience to tell the story they want to tell without really paying attention to what's come before. That's why you have these continuity errors. It's not the issue, and really these continuity errors really, as far as hyperspace are concerned, have really only started occurring in the Disney era, and it really did not occur in the EU. They tried to explain it pretty well. They had but they stayed pretty consistent. I can't say that there wasn't any offender to it in the old EU, because I didn't read all of the old EU, but I read quite a bit.
Right.
And I can't remember an offender within all those authors. And we don't nearly have as many works in the Disney era as we had during that era. And I think we've had plenty of offenders within the just how space travel works in general. And I don't even let Filoni and Favreau off the hook on this.
No, because you put out a video just a few weeks ago when he's traveling in sublight, but travels the same distance, like in an unreasonable amount of time.
Right. I just said throw physics out the window. That was the name of that video.
That's right. And Star Wars, even in A New Hope, Han seems to use interchangeably hyperspeed, light speed.
Right, that's true. But I mean, I think Thor actually did a pretty good explanation beyond that on that. So there's probably like a light speed barrier, kind of like we have a sound barrier.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And so if whatever, I think what it is basically you're pulled into the hyperspace, and during that period of time that you're in hyperspace, you're technically moving at or faster than the speed of light in real space. So you're not sitting still anywhere. So when you say I'm jumping the light speed, you're really saying I'm breaking the light barrier into hyperspace. And so I think that can be explained without it being a contradiction.
No, but it does require explanation because it's not use consistency.
No, absolutely. But I mean, but that doesn't make it a contradiction. It's when you have two different things occur that don't align. That's when you're having your contradiction. And, or something that, why didn't you do that before kind of aspect of things. So like one of the things that offended people the most was the hold-on maneuver. And not to go into that, but they were like, what the heck? Because it was a logic break. Again, I don't mind hyperspace being a magical, way to travel, and I went and did some explanation to try to make that possible. And I did the best retcon, basically saying that what made it possible was hyperspace tracking. So that hyperspace tracking creates an open window, as it were, into hyperspace, so that when somebody travels toward it at the speed of light, they literally get sucked in, and they literally just come right through it, and they never leave hyperspace. And so you're having a collision inside hyperspace.
So I just wanted to bring this up. This is again from Wikipedia, and again, Wikipedia is not the Bible of all things, but it's a good reference to give you a starting point and understand that people disagree and have arguments with some Wikipedia content. And this comes from the Canon tab. Again, Wikipedia has two tabs, Canon and Legends. This is from the Canon tab, and it goes exactly what you were talking about. It says it can only be accessed through molecular displacement, which was achieved by breaking the speed of light. It was Codominus. Cool. I don't know that it kind of had a relationship to real space, meaning each point in real space was associated with a unique point in hyperspace. Right, so it's an alternate dimension.
I think that means code-dimensional, meaning the dimensions kind of overlaid one another.
Yeah, I take that. And all adjacent points in real space were adjacent in hyperspace as well. Additionally, every object in real space, such as stars, planets, asteroids, had a shadow counterpart in hyperspace. Aside from those well-established facts acknowledged by all competent astrophysicists, and other aspects of hyperspace admittedly remain a mystery. So, there's a relationship to light speed, and it seems that you enter it through achieving or breaking the speed of light, which is why you see things come out of hyperspace. Sometimes moving quite quickly.
Yeah, I actually don't think so. In general, the way it has been is that whatever your speed was going into hyperspace is the same speed that it was coming out of hyperspace. What you see when people are doing that is that they've achieved some sort of natural acceleration before that. So there's not, when you're breaking this. I mean, again, this comes from the EU. What you had was what they called pseudo motion. So really, space was stretching in that moment that you seemed to zip off into that. So you weren't really traveling, faster than the speed of light into the hyperspace. Literally, space was moving. So like the way that not to go into some. I don't want to be a bog this down or be a traitor by speaking of a different franchise. But the idea is similar to that you see in Star Trek. Oh, please don't be mad. And but they literally warp space. So the idea behind their process is that they never travel faster than the speed of light, because that broke the laws of physics. But space could be moved faster than the speed of light, and then they get moved through space.
Well, they fold.
They warp space. They literally warp space, right?
So that you put this point and this point right next to each other,
right,
instead of at opposite ends, right?
That's right. So literally, what happens is you become coterminous, and which means you're in two places at the same time, and then so you release the place where you used to be, and now you're attached to the new place, and so you do that really fast over and over and over and over and over again. Right? But hyperspace is different, right?
Yeah, it's not the folding. It's as they mentioned, it has parallel spaces in real space. It's all
exactly. No,
right?
but I'm trying to explain the
Yeah.
idea of what you're. So basically,
Yeah.
what you're seeing is hyperspace fold into real space for a brief moment, and that's that pseudo motion where it's literally leaving real space into hyperspace, and it's not done by technically. You're not ever traveling light speed in real space. You're not breaking the light barrier. You're not breaking physics in real space because that physics doesn't apply in hyperspace because it's a different dimension. So what you're seeing is that fold over. And
Well, but it's
anyway.
also implied that you can enter it by reaching travel. It's reached by traveling at or faster than the speed of light. So while you do have the part where it's a molecular displacement, that's what you're talking about. It's that molecular displacement. You could achieve it, and I think you said this as well. Like the speed you entered would carry over to the speed you exited.
Right.
Meaning somebody was traveling at or near light speed, and then engaged their hyperspace drive that then does that molecular displacement to throw you into the other dimension.
I think. Oh, I mean, like I said, physics is thrown out the window. But
Right.
let's say for a moment, that that physics does apply here, and that physics that does apply is that you can't achieve in real space the speed of light because it takes infinite energy for a mass to travel the speed of light. All right, so that's that little bit of physics applies here. So that means they never achieve it, and that's also why that they can be sitting in atmosphere when they jump to hyperspace. They don't have to be moving the speed of light.
Right.
So that's and so what's happened is that they've figured out how to do that molecular displacement, all right, that breaks it up and moves them into hyperspace. And when that happens, they move faster than the speed of everything in hyperspace. All movement is at the speed of light or faster.
There you go. And so so that's a good point. And what we're talking about, and at least as it goes to the Light of the Jedi, is when they break the ship up and it comes out of hyperspace, it's carrying the momentum because they don't have the hyperspace drive there, and that's why some pieces stay in hyperspace for a very long time, like days and days.
Right.
Other pieces came out more quickly as the momentum dropped and they got thrown out. They didn't use the molecular displacement to return back to real space. And I want to address Will's question. It says the episode of Rebels where there's a tracker on the Ghost, so they threw the Phantom out. Yeah, I remember that, Will. I just watched it like a week ago or so. And he made a point before about how, where was it? Hyperspace, where was it? I think this is what XR was talking about as well. When the Ghost was in hyperspace and the Phantom detached, it got pushed out into real space. The tunnel was kind of an atmosphere. I think that's because it has a parallel place in real space, and when it was pushed off, it lost its connection to the hyperdrive, and then it would have gone through that molecular.
Right. So it really immediately reappears. So I mean, it's like it comes out and it's coming out at the speed it was when it entered hyperspace, and the speed it was already traveling in real space prior. So that's what should have happened to these components as they left. Is the point?
I see. So they must have gone in really quick when they entered.
Right. So that means they had to have been traveling near the speed of light prior, which they weren't.
Well, I don't know that they weren't.
Yeah, I think we can realistically say they weren't, because it would take you had people on the ship. It would take, even with their technology moving really fast, the acceleration needed to reach that would have been tremendously. I mean, to me, it's one of those you're stretching the rules in my mind, and it's fine. It's now seeming incredulous.
What breaks the rules for them to be traveling near light speed?
So, when again, I know they have the abilities to dampen, inertia and things like that, inertial dampeners and stuff like that on these ships, but nowhere at any point in time have we seen these ships, outside of hyperspace moving near the speed of light.
Well, then how do you deal with it's reached at traveling faster than the speed of light?
Because when they move into hyperspace, they're moving at or faster than the speed of light.
Why couldn't you be going that fast when you entered?
Then if you can move faster than the speed of light in real space, why do you need hyperspace?
I would presumably because you can go in the empty space lane, right?
No, it's the same. The shadow that affects you, the same gravity that affects you in any object of anything that's in real space, affects you in hyperspace. It's the mass shadow. So in order to travel near or beyond the speed of light, you have to, at the speed of light or faster, you have to be in hyperspace. So near the speed of light is one of those accelerations that makes, it has no practical purpose or need. And the energy expenditure is makes no sense either.
Oh, okay. So I follow your logic, but we definitely have engines in real space that travel faster than others in real space.
Sure, I'm not saying that. So there are things that affect how fast you travel in hyperspace, and it's not really the engine, as it were. It's the navigomputer that affect how fast you travel in hyperspace.
Well,
all right, and I'll if I can
engine types, right?
Right. So when Han Solo was talking about his 0.5 pilot's light speed, all right, he's really talking about his motivator and navigomputer, and it's not the engines that push it. So like he's not faster than a Corellian ship in real space. He's faster than a Corellian ship in hyperspace. Right? He can outrun them in hyperspace, and the reason being is because what you effectively have, and this is again we're not going into the weeds, which is I know we didn't want to do, but the idea is that you have a computer that can map all the movement of all the objects known and unknown in space and navigate their mass shadows to create the straightest line possible so that your ship can travel between them, all right, in the shortest amount of time. That's what creates that 0.5. It's not that their engines are faster. They all technically could travel the same speed in hyperspace. They would just have a high chance of running into something.
Yeah. So very good. I mean, very, very good. XR Coons asked great questions, and I know where he's coming from, and not to derail us, but these are great questions as well. Why couldn't you sit in hyperspace and shoot missiles out and other stuff out? And I'll raise up in the last season of the Clone Wars when in that middle arc with the Martez sisters, they kick out a big container of spice in hyperspace and say, well, it's lost in hyperspace forever, right? Presumably, at some point, eventually, it would plummet out of hyperspace in following what we've seen in Light of the Jedi. be a potential projectile.
Right, and then run into something and destroy a world. We were destroyed by a spice container today.
Well, it might, right? That, like, even in Light of the Jedi, not all the parts came out where they would ever cause any damage, right? Some of them exited out in empty space to continue on a path that would never impact, which is fine.
Did you ever see what a grain of sand would do at the speed of light to the Earth?
No, but I'm guessing it's not good.
It's not good at all.
So yeah, but if that spice container is sitting in hyperspace, presumably it's an object that could be collided with, right?
Right. So it could either be collided with, creating another ship that now has a chance to run into everything, or its pieces all running and everything, or it comes out and it was, if I remember correctly, they were opening up, and so all their little grains of spice were flying through hyperspace, and so now they're spreading across the galaxy, and their little grains moving near the speed of light, running into planets, running into satellites, running into ships that are moving in real space, and so now we have a new disaster. And it's all caused, so that we have the Martez disaster, where half the system was destroyed by spice flying out near the speed of light.
Well, maybe, or you might, have a moon that gets destroyed or something. But
but I mean, you get my point. The point of it is that we're now. That's what I'm saying. We're moving into the incredulous,
or it could just run into a sun and not cause
nothing could happen. But I mean, or it could destroy the sun. Well, that sun just went supernova. I wonder what happened.
Well, at least in Light of the Jedi, there was a particular class of sun with a particular class of material that was a potential to be devastating. But if we get back as far as like the Martez sisters and the spice that they kicked out, and with the Purgle and their collisions, right? There's issues with things running into other things in hyperspace and causing them to fall out. Right.
No, absolutely. I mean, we've established that something can happen, right? But we haven't established that is devastating to anybody else outside of hyperspace until the Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And now again with the High Republic.
Yeah. Well, so what we don't know, and this is what we've got to have to find out. And let me just get caught up here. And Gray just rewatched the Martez sister arc. I think is sometimes maligned too far, because there is good content in there. If you go through and rewatch, you can see like where they were impacted by the Jedi from an earlier incident that had happened on Coruscant, and the Jedi weren't perceived the way that a lot of the Jedi thought they were perceived. So there's stuff like that, and you get to see Ahsoka dealing with this transition phase in her life. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The other side of that is, oh look, Gray got Captain Pennsylvania to watch all of Clone Wars and on to Rebels. He's on the Ahsoka train. I've got a good friend of mine that I'm got on the same path. So good on you, Gray. But what we don't know.
I personally think that Rebels is better than Clone Wars, but I know that's sacrilegious to say that, but that's me.
Yeah. It's almost sacrilegious to say anything's better than the Clone Wars. It's kind of raised to that kind of elevation.
It's good, but it ain't that good.
The Mandalorian, right? But anyway, the what we don't know is what happens between this event that happens in the High Republic, right, in the Light of the Jedi. We don't know what happens with hyperspace travel technology, and what happens then with how things get adjusted as a result of this incident. Right. So
yeah, but I mean, it clearly tells you that now it can be weaponized, and so the idea that it is not weaponized now is now again ridiculous. It's the same issue you have with the hold-on maneuver. If this was possible, then it should have been weaponized a long time ago. And the idea that it's a war crime does not stop anybody. If you're a group of terrorists, they're going to do it. It's I mean, you'll do whatever you have to do in order to win. I mean, it's only a war crime if you lose.
Well, there's a couple things that right. I wouldn't even go down that path. But the thing is, the technology that gets built into ships that travel through hyperspace between the time of the Light of the Jedi and even Rebels could explain why you don't see more of these incidents where pieces and parts go flying out. But
except
we don't
that Poe says Old Republic technology is much better than the current technology.
Well, but that still doesn't necessarily address what is the impact of this afterwards and why we don't see these kind of techniques used. Like, I think XR brought up before, right? Like, why don't you see people traveling through hyperspace and then releasing a big box of shrapnel at a particular point to just cause mass damage somewhere, right?
Right, exactly. Why don't you do that? I mean, if you can travel through shields through hyperspace, which they show in TFA, right? Then why don't you just travel your missile right through hyperspace and blow up the Starkiller base? Why not?
Right. Solo does a similar thing, right? So there are times, and I think there's at least a case or two in the Clone Wars where entering and exiting hyperspace happen within things that they're not supposed to. But the question is, why don't you weaponize those things?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer has to be, or could be, potentially, it doesn't have to be. The answer could be, well, because we didn't do it. The end.
But if you can, you will. And that's just war. That's how war works.
Oh, sure it is. Sure it is. And the explanation can be given in technology that's applied after the event.
Well,
so
it has to be, except the fact that you see contradictions to that as well. Again, when it comes to the Force Awakens, it contradicts that hyperspace can't be used as a weapon. So the Force Awakens combined with The Last Jedi says that hyperspace is and should be and should have always been a weapon.
Well, potentially, and so I've brought this up before as well, that on Thor's Discord, right? Like, because this is the first time you see it doesn't mean it was the first time it was done. Also, it doesn't mean that there weren't technologies put in place to prevent that kind of thing happening that were not employed. Just because the technology is generally used and is part of the regular day-to-day operations doesn't mean that they used it that time. So
you're saying a massive military base would not have anti-missile capability? I mean, that it
might.
There's no way. There's no
not
way.
Only might,
if it can absolutely, if it is your Achilles heel and you have the ability to stop it, you will.
No. I'm saying it would have it, but they might not have it engaged, right? So just because you have, well, because they weren't prepared for that event to happen, right?
But why? You would always be prepared for that event because it's your Achilles heel.
No, not if you didn't. Not if it had not been used in decades and decades. Nobody had done it because it was so futile. So you've got the defense there if it were ever needed, but you become lackadaisical in preparing and arming it because nobody ever does that. And then when you realize that, holy crap, somebody's getting ready to do that, and you're not able to prepare quick enough with the technology you have, then it's too late. And that's the issue, is that the technology would have been there, the technology would have been available, but it was not prepared or activated because it was such an unexpected event to happen. It's much like driving your car down the road, and you can become lackadaisical and paying attention, and then an animal jumps out and hits you that you don't see. Now, animals jump out and hit cars all the time, and you know that you should be aware all the time. And especially living here, and this will go really well with Bullsith, right? He has a big deer aversion, but living here in Ohio, we know there are certain times a year when the deer are on the move, and they are frequently propelling themselves at vehicles, as he would put, right? So there's many times that happens, but you become lackadaisical and you're not looking, and then you get hit. Why did you get hit? Well, because you weren't looking, but they're out there.
Well, most of the time it occurs at night and you don't have enough time to react. There's no technology. I mean, now they're coming up with technology to thwart it, right. Anti-collision technology, right?
Right.
And, and that will help that. But I've hit a deer and I've hit a deer twice in my life, and it was never during the daytime, and I did not see them coming until it was too late. I was fully looking. All right. And that's not the same as this one. All right, in this case, because you have a whole branch of military called Air Defense Artillery, and they would definitely have the same branch within their thing, and that's their sole job is to stop aircraft, spacecraft, missiles from striking you, right?
Right.
And so we have this massive thing. We know that it's a catastrophic strike if it hits. If a missile gets through, it's catastrophic. Right?
Sure. Just
like an anti-ship missile, right? So if it hits a ship, it's catastrophic. So there's whole defenses against it, right? And
right.
So the idea that they would like, hey, you know what? It's okay, guys. Y'all just take a break. We don't really need you anymore. You're fine. Well, we know it's catastrophic. We know that only one gets shot through it. I mean, last time it happened was 20 years ago with
things like this happen. So you and I both are veterans. We both served in one of the duties that I had in combat duty was headquarters security. So if deployed, our job was to protect the headquarters command, and you had to go through all the password protocols and authorization, be on the lookout for all kinds of threats that can infiltrate the headquarters command.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you that in real life, you get as time passes and you do that job over time, your ability to stay sharp and precise get dulled.
Sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I get it. I get what you're talking about, but there's a far cry from that happening during the middle of combat, and a far cry from that happening elsewhere. So in both cases, whether it's Starkiller Base or on the Supremacy, they were engaged in combat. Both of them. And the reason why I say that the Starkiller was engaged in combat is because they were getting ready to target Dakar. All right? They just reported all that. They were moving all their positions. Everybody was on full alert. All right? If you're on full alert, it's far cry than being. This is a far cry from being on a maneuver where you set up your headquarters and you're walking and there's no real threat, and you're like, oh, I'm so tired. I just want to go home. I'm sick of this maneuver. I'm tired of it. and being downtown in the middle of Iraq, right after you've gone through and you're setting up your headquarters, you're not lackadaisical during that time. You're on super high alert.
Sure.
They're just, those are different times, and that's the same thing would have happened at Starkiller, and that's the same thing that would have happened at the Supremacy. And the idea that they're becoming lackadaisical during this period of time is to me is disingenuous. No offense, but it is.
But what if you're charged with overseeing a battalion of defense, right? Technology
Sure.
that had not been challenged in 3 lifetimes, right?
Okay, but you have, usually the technology that you have has multiple purposes. So for example, if you had a phalanx, phalanx gun, and it's an anti-aircraft and anti-missile aircraft. It'll shoot a mortar out of the sky. All right. So this is your job. This is what you do. This is what you maintain. All right. And so it didn't just do that. It does aircraft. So it's going to be, so these same technologies that shoot at Poe trying to fly by is the same technology that's going to track and try to shoot out the missile. So either they don't have the technology or they do have the technology. And I would say that everything that we saw and their ability to track just Poe in the Last Jedi says they do not have the technology.
Well, I don't know that they don't. I just don't know that they were employing it.
Right. I mean, the reason inside the novel, let's go to the novel, The Last Jedi, does not mention any technology about that at all to stop it. They said the only reason why it works in The Last Jedi is because of the shields of the rat as being experimental. All right.
Oh,
but that said, all right. If you go back into the movie, Hux didn't act like it was, because otherwise it'd have been like, well, who cares? She's just going to jump into hyperspace and disappear. But that's not what he did. They went, oh no, it's happening. And they started shoot her. They freaked out. All right. But the only reason why it worked was something that Hux had no knowledge of.
Well, that's right. Why would he have knowledge of? Right.
Right. But, and so he should have expected it not to work.
Well, I don't know that he was planning on her ramming them that hard. He was just thinking she was going to ram them.
No. He saw that she was getting ready to go into hyperspace.
Yeah.
It's what he saw. He said, shoot her before she goes into hyperspace. But the only reason why it worked was because of her shield. So there's a discontinuity there as well.
So I got to go back and look. But was he doing that because he was afraid she was going to get away?
No, he's afraid because they're going to hit her. He's clearly afraid of that. That's clearly how he reacts.
So normally, wouldn't you be able to stop that from happening because you've got like a gravity well, and maybe their gravity well wasn't turned on?
But that's not how he acted.
I know, but he would act that way because he knows the gravity well's not on, and that she can use that. She can use that technique to ram up. He may not expect the same amount of damage, but that there was potential for damage because they didn't have their defenses properly aligned to prevent that from happening.
But that's not the description of what occurred inside the book. I'm just telling you, you have a lot more description of why. The only reason why it works in the book is because the Raddus has an experimental shield. That is the retcon that was given for it in the book, The Last Jedi.
Well, and that's the only reason the Raddus doesn't disintegrate on impact, and why it creates such a
right. Otherwise, it wouldn't have done anything. That's the implication.
Yeah, or very little.
Right.
It would have done little.
But that's definitely not how Hux reacts. It's definitely not how the people on the bridge react.
Well, true, but I don't know that that's necessarily a problem. When that's coming at you, you don't want to get hit. Rather,
right. But their expectations should be that they can't harm or will do very little damage to the Supremacy.
Right.
All right. And hyperspace with a hyperspace ram.
Right.
All right. then they should be like she's a fool.
Well, not only, but you still don't want them to hit you, right?
Listen, if I am going and I'm doing I got a super carrier, let's just say, all right, and a ship turns toward me to ram me, but I know that when they ram me, they're only going to do the same amount of damage as let's say a speedboat.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not going to care. I'm going to be like, stay on path.
Right. It may cause a hole, but it's not going to take you under.
It may not even cause a hole. That's what my point. I mean, so like, like they rammed you normally, you'd be like, oh, I'm worried about that. That's going to hurt. Right. And, and because now we have even though the ship's so much bigger and we're going to have let's see what's comparable. I mean, honestly, to the Supremacy. So really what's comparable to this is probably, a metal hulled tugboat effectively, and so it might do a little damage, but it ain't going to do a lot.
Right. It might puncture. That's what I'm saying, right? It can puncture, create a hole in the hull. And you don't want that. That would be bad.
No, I would say that, but the truth of it is that you wouldn't change your path. The ship, if you know it's not going to do any effective damage, all right, that's going to stop you from your course of action. You stay on your path.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the difference in size in the in the Radis and the Supremacy, there is no damage. There's no appreciable damage that it would have done without the hyperspace ram being effective.
That's not necessarily true. I mean, the Radis is a decent sized vehicle, but
it's the same size as a Star Destroyer. The Star Destroyers, are very small in comparison to the and they dock with it, and you can see where they dock in the back of the Supremacy. The Supremacy is 60 kilometers wide.
Sure, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have the hull isn't that much thicker or reinforced or
sure, but even so, it is still insignificant damage. It will not stop you. It will not stop your course of action.
No, you certainly wouldn't expected it to slice all the way through the wing and into the destroyers in the back, right? You would not have expected that.
But their reaction clearly is a freak out moment.
Well, they were worried, yeah.
And they should not. He should have been like, whatever. We'll lose some people.
So Dark Wader brings up a point here about in Anakin reprogramming the separate ship to careen into the moon. That was absolutely true. So we know that,
but it didn't jump into hyperspace. It never jumps into hyperspace. It just crashes into the moon.
But it accelerates into that moon. It does,
but it never jumps into hyperspace.
Right. I bring up acceleration for a reason. Anyway, it does crash into the moon and blows up and causes quite a bit of damage to the moon as well. For
all we know, that the point of its jump, where it's intending to jump, is from the center of the moon.
Yeah.
And so there's a stretch of the of real space into hyperspace, so it appears to accelerate, but it never jumps into hyperspace because it's caught in the mass shadow of the moon.
Right. So I think the point is that kamikaze type crashing things into other things is not unheard of. That had indeed happened. There's several times in the Clone Wars where you see one ship run into another. You even see it in the original trilogy.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not denying that isn't something you can do. In fact, it's the kamikaze strike of whatchamacallit into the executor that brings it down of the A-wing pilot. And, he goes, I lost my shields, and he goes right into the bridge, right? And then they crash into
exactly.
I'm not saying that doesn't occur, all right? But you see a cascade of events that occurred for that. So what occurred in that was, sir, we've lost all our forward deflector shields. And he goes, intensify forward firepower. That's the next line. And the next thing we see is the A-wing pilot lose control because he's, I'm hit, and he goes, and he loses control, and he flies into the bridge. So there's a series of events that occurs to allow what occurred with losing control of the executor to crash, right? So the continuity of that whole sequence is kept in place.
So
right?
why,
That is not the continuity of the sequence in The Last Jedi.
Why is it that we don't see even sublight ramming more frequently? Why do you not see that?
Why don't you see that? Because you still have to get through the shields.
Right. So when you so you got to get through the shields, but with a large enough object, you can still do it, right?
Maybe.
Right.
Because they surely didn't do it when they were trying to ram into the ships in Rogue One. The only time that occurred is when the Star Destroyer went through the shield gate.
Yeah.
And when the shield gate crashed, then it brought the shield down because the mechanism by which they were controlling the shield was destroyed.
Sure. But there's lots of good questions like this in Star Wars where the battle tactics don't make a lot of sense. We've talked about it, some of them as far as troop movements.
Sometimes they don't make sense, but I mean, for the most part, you can put the continuity of the event together, the same as we just did with Rogue One, same as we just did with Return of the Jedi. What you can't do is do that with The Last Jedi.
Right, but there are just let me just back up 1 second. The example are I knew it 2 seconds ago and now I can't. You guys will get it for me. It's the things that depower everything, that shut off all the electricity.
Ion bombs or
ion
cannon.
Ion cannons, right? So we see ion cannons used in the prequel era. Grievous had the ship that shot the great big one out. We also see ion cannons used in the original trilogy era.
Empire Strikes Back. Yep.
Quite effectively to take a Star Destroyer's power completely out.
Right.
So why are ion cannons not used more frequently in combat to disable the shields of another ship in order to ram it?
All right, so they do attempt to do that.
It's very clear, right?
And they do that in Rogue One, right?
Yeah.
They use the ion torpedoes, and they do exactly that. They ram it.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm just saying, like, there are things where, why don't they? Well, just because for the storytelling purpose, they don't.
No, I mean, there is reasons why you don't do it. All right, so like unless you don't, for example, let's go back to Return of the Jedi. All right, unless our A-wing hits the bridge, that crash does not occur. Right. So it was a specific luck or the Force, however you want to do it, that allowed a particular ship to crash in the exact spot needed to allow the crash to occur. It is, that's a 1 in a million shot. All right, not the hyperspace jump that wouldn't have worked, right? And so I mean, this is the premise, right? So that's a 1 in a million. Luck went into their favor. All right. So, but otherwise, your torpedoes, if you're a plane crashing into a target, it will not do as much damage as a plane with several bombs dropping its bombs on its targets. So an X-wing could absolutely ram and do a lot of damage to a frigate or to a Star Destroyer, but it will do more damage if it drops 6 of its proton torpedoes and hits it. So some of them are going to come in with ion bombs. Some are going to come in with proton torpedoes, and they're going to hit it as hard as they can, and they're going to do a lot of damage to it. But they'll do a lot more damage than they will by ramming it.
Yes. Yeah. I asked the same question in Empire Strikes Back. Why, when they have the ion cannon that they shot the Star Destroyer with to escape, why didn't they shoot the AT-ATs with them? Right, the AT-ATs. Why didn't they shoot those? Right?
Right.
Seems like that would have been an easy way to stop an AT-AT from attacking, right? But
well, you see the angle of that cannon and the size of the cannon in Empire Strikes Back. I mean, it's not conducive to. I mean, it'd be like trying to use the, you remember the battleships, big guns,
oh yeah.
Or it would be like trying to use that to take out a tank that's close by. You could do it, but the odds of you really doing it are really low.
I'm just saying, like, and if you look at the ion cannon that came out of the Malevolence, and Dark Winter, thanks for giving me that name because I get these name blocked. I mean, when you see that the ion that comes out of that, it's a growing sphere, right? It gets bigger and bigger. So it's sphere of.
And it is a super weapon. They talk about it,
Yeah, and that you never see that employed in that kind of fashion after. Why?
Right.
Right. If you keep following this kind of logic, you can apply it to all kinds of reasoning, and the brain. Right. So to say
not using that technology again isn't. I mean, they still do use that technology. I mean, there has to be. I mean, there's a cost benefit analysis that occurs. So if let's say that one, the rebels don't have a lot of shipyards to go around and build this stuff, right? Now, admittedly, the Empire does. They could probably go do that and try to take out the rebels, but the rebels are disparate small groups. They're not whole fleets typically, all right? And so, so going and investing in a large weapon like this that can do that is probably, my assumption, all right, this is an assumption, just doesn't have the cost benefit analysis, all right, or cost benefit, all right? Unlike the reason why the Death Star has a good cost benefit is because, and then at least in their calculations is that its fear that it creates will make the rulers of different planets say, I am not rebelling, stop this rebellion because you're going to get us killed. It is like if everybody thought that their city was going to get nuked if they went against the government, guess what would stop happening? Protests.
Right. Severe consequences. And yeah, that I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because it's true. We agree on it, but there's nothing really to explore other than just saying that's how tyrannical governments govern their people. It's not that the people don't want to uprise; it's that the consequence is so high for even doing anything. So that's how you see those governments survive. And Dale brings up a good point. There is an episode where Anakin's flying that cloaking ship, right? That's season 1, I think, episode 1, where he flies that. Oh no, it's not. It's out of order. If you watch it in chronological
order, yeah, it's against the Spider General. What was his name? Or Admiral.
Yeah, he's the tarantula guy.
Yeah, the tarantula guy. I can't remember his name.
But it's in chronological. It's the first episode, or it's right up there.
Yeah, it's like right near the front. But it's really like it's good. I like that episode.
See cloaking used frequently on any kind of vehicle. And he raises a point, right? The shields had to be down to fire, so maybe shields aren't even up. So yeah, you get on in The Last Jedi, maybe the shields aren't up. Maybe and it's my point, right? Like because they have the defenses doesn't mean that they have them employed. They become arrogant and understand they are on the offensive, and that the opponent provides no threat, and so they get lackadaisical. They're not paying attention, and all of a sudden, oh wait, they are a threat. We don't have time to get things turned on.
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing still rests on the book and its description, and so if it had said because they have their shields down, and this, then I would say that you have a credible, argument. Except for the fact that they just don't. That's not. They simply don't give that as a reason why it worked.
Yeah, Bob, it is always snowing at the North Pole. That's why you see it snowing back there all the time.
Right, it's a magical place.
It is a magical place, and we have magical snow that snows all the time.
Right, and their magic and the logic of their magic works.
Yes.
Had to get that dig in. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to bring up because this is the kind of thing that Imagic Maker and I often we're in agreement. We have very cordial conversations, but you get an idea today just how much we disagree on some things and how these disagreements can still be done civilly.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're friends, and that's really the main thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I mean, do I still love Star Wars? Yes. Do I recognize that there's a continuity problem? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's been true. That's been true since the prequels.
Yeah. Will said ion cannons do get used like that in Battlefront. So resembles Death Star Super. Yeah. Tarkin pops over to land his destroyer cruiser atop this protesting. Right. I think Josh Lucas has been using, like, he has that destroyer come over anytime he talks about Disney, and they come in threatening, right? So same idea. No, and I see some of your guys' comments. I know I skipped over them. Just to be fair, I'll go back and point out. I know that not everybody's a fan of The Last Jedi. A Magic Maker's not, and I know many of you are not as well. And I did skip over XR Kun making some points about The Last Jedi being bad, and Dark Winter as well. So Dark Winter was talking about Last Jedi being bad, and then XR Kun as well. But guys, I just want you to know that I did see them. I skipped over them because I don't want to get too sidetracked.
Yeah, I'm not trying to go into the path of it's bad. I mean, there's a lot of things you can. I mean, you could do the same thing about a lot of movies. It's just and that, to me, that's a beating a dead horse. But it is relevant in this time because we're talking about hyperspace, and effectively the majority of the discontinuity in hyperspace has occurred. And actually, I can't think of any of them that hadn't. But unless you want to consider the piece with the Clone Wars, has occurred, in which I don't consider because to me it's explainable, but has occurred under the Disney era, and to me it's because you have multiple different authors, which I'm sure are really good authors in their own right, that have not taken the time to reconcile and ensure what they're writing is in line with everything else, so that it makes sense. And that's my take on it.
Yeah, I could make everybody mad again here in a minute. I'll wait. But brace yourself. If you're geared to get really mad, and there's things about the current political social climate in Disney and Lucasfilm and Star Wars in the fandom, and you like to get really exercised and angry, brace yourselves. I'll bring it to you in just a moment. Okay.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah,
I'm trying hard to avoid that. I'm trying to keep us on topic. That's hyperspace.
Bob, that's how you survive the cold for years. You know, Bob, a better question is, how does Hoth have oxygen? So there you go. The range of escape pods were further than the resistance ships, so they might have had to lower the ships to shoot them. Right. There's all kinds of things like that. And just because we don't have the answer doesn't mean there isn't an answer. And that's my point about the technology that comes after this part that we're talking about. Let me share the screen again.
Except the fact they give you the continual logic of why they're able to shoot the ships and destroy them. I mean, the reason why they're able to destroy the shuttles that are going down is because they don't have shields.
Mark was out flying a kite on the beach. Real windy, had his own hyperspace. Oh, that's great, Mark. So the issues, and I think you're really good here at Magic Maker as well in pointing out if Purgle are destroying ships in hyperspace, if people are kicking stuff out of ships in hyperspace, the Ghost, the Phantom is separating from the Ghost in hyperspace. All these kind of things happen. Why don't we see more of the type of event that you see in Light of the Jedi, the whole premise of it? Why don't you see that after this? And my answer for this moment is, well, we don't know yet. we don't know what is it that changes the nature of hyperspace travel or technology that these things are not that kind of threat anymore. Why aren't people throwing shrapnel out in hyperspace to cause mass damage? Why aren't people putting barriers in hyperspace so that it raises the point? If you're getting chased in hyperspace, why don't you just put some shrapnel out behind you, like chaff, right?
Right.
And mess with the people following you, that kind of stuff, right? There's all kinds of questions that come up. And the short answer is, well, because that isn't good for storytelling.
But that's my point, is that they're contriving some conveniences for their story, as opposed to keeping their thought process contained with what came before. And so it's, to me, it's a little bit lazy, but it's the problem of writing and working in a world that already exists. So you have to maintain continuity, or you force people to try to figure out a retcon. And so my expectation is they probably will not address it, and you'll be left with, I don't know.
Yeah, very, very likely. Let's see if I can find this credit here. There's no, not there.
But what I'll probably do is end up writing my own retcon for it, and it'll probably have something to do with the strange red and gold turbulence.
Yeah. So at the end of Flight of the Jedi. So here, I promised your bulletin board material to start a month of online feud and battles, right? So I promised it. At the very end, and I can't get this to come up in the version I could share. I was gonna show this. Oh wait, I might actually be past it. Let me give me 1 second here. Let's see if I can go back. 377. It should be just a little bit more. 377. I got to get to page 3. Nope, it keeps jumping. I can't get it to do it on them. So it says in the credits at the end, thank you to the folks at Lucasfilm Story Group. Gave us endless time and focus as we were building the High Republic. And I'd like to particularly mention Pablo Hidalgo, whose notes were always additive and came with instructive diagrams about the mysterious nature of hyperspace. So there you go. There's your bulletin board material so that everybody can get in an outrage. It's all Pablo Hidalgo's fault. There you go. Yes, Mark, it is related to Thor's last video. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think I'll leave it at
that. So YouTube user says, since hyperspace is kind of another dimension, you can't run into stuff without gravity signatures. Holder's maneuver never fully reached hyperspace. Right. She was, the explanation I understand, she had not fully entered hyperspace. She was at that acceleration point. So it's the perfect coordination of time and space and speed. It happened concurrently that caused that to happen, was as well as mass and shields.
Again, they make it clear to me that the shields made that hyperspace ram possible.
Right, because the shields kept the ship from just being destroyed.
And so
it reinforced the strength of the Radis. So you got time, speed, location. Like it had to happen precisely at that place, at that point of contact. Had to be the exact precise moment that she entered.
I still like my retcon better.
Yeah, your retcon, I think works really, really well. But
Yeah.
that's part of the one in a million chance. Bob
Yeah.
Pablo is not for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I mean, if you have it that the tracker creates basically a wormhole into hyperspace that is tracking these things, and then you just fly down that wormhole, it actually creates the reason why Hux knew it. He knew it as a weakness. He knew there was no failsafe for it, and he knew in that moment that Holdo had figured it out.
Yep.
And so he knew there was nothing that he could do to stop it. I mean, if you follow that, now maybe the shields make it more deadly, but it still would have been deadly to them anyway. And maybe the shields are why it destroys everything behind the supremacy versus destroying the supremacy itself. But yeah, I mean, I wish that they would watch my video on that retcon and say, oh yeah, this is the one in a million chance we have to have our tracker on, and
Right.
then it makes sense why you don't use a tracker really in
So I brought that
again.
up to somebody, and somebody asked me if that tracker, the backtracking the tracker, really works. Then why wouldn't you? Same sort of idea. Why wouldn't you then put something in place where you could jettison a tracker to another vehicle, right? So something's following you, you kick it out the backside and it attaches to that vehicle that then establishes a link to your vehicle that you can use as a weaponized way to follow that track back and attack them.
So meaning that you could attack somebody who's tracking you?
Or you could create a tracker on them even if they hadn't initiated it.
I don't understand that. I don't understand what you're saying. Meaning that even if they're not following you, they could always use it.
They're following you. You're in a place where you're in combat against them, right? So maybe you're stationary even in the same system where you could attach a beacon to that
a missile and have it fly back down.
Or attach a beacon to the vehicle that the beacon is a tracker.
Right.
And so once that attaches to their vehicle and it's already pre-programmed to track your vehicle, then it would allow you to then backtrack that and attack them.
I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't.
Yeah.
Here you
go. I found it.
My whole thing was that anytime the tracker was employed, that it could be used against them.
So here's your quote, everybody, right there. It's at the bottom. The folks at Lucasfilm. Here you go. Particularly Pablo Hidalgo. There you
go. I mean, to me, it just goes to show you that a lot of the story group does not have a good handle on how things work. It's unfortunate. I mean, it really is unfortunate that they are not willing. To me, it's almost that they're almost not willing to stand up to say your story can't happen. You need to rewrite it.
Maybe. I think a more likely is that we haven't gotten far enough into the story yet to know the answer.
I don't think they'll explain it. They'll leave it unexplained.
But that's probably true. I mean, it is Star Wars. And when it comes to storytelling, these kind of details are things that they just don't particularly have a strong practice for, for keeping control of.
Yeah,
they just don't.
It's unfortunate, but it's the problems of continuity are being compounded as Star Wars goes on, and this, of course, we have this as a repeat offender, but continuity is going to continue to be an offender throughout the Star Wars universe, and some people might get fatigued by it. I mean, at some point, it'll take them out of certain stories, and I know for me, that's partially why I do fan fictions, because I try to fix continuity errors so I can, because the ideas behind and concepts behind Star Wars are what I love, and I just wish the storytellers that were teaching, that were writing these things and were keeping consistent and taking the time to ensure that their continuity is solid, and that it goes all the way back to Lucas. I mean, it's not it's a tradition within Lucasfilm to not maintain continuity,
Right.
and it's a shame. And again, I'm in love with concepts of Star Wars. I'm not in love with everything about Star Wars, and so I take what I like and I leave what I don't.
And I think that's the case with most of us. And Mark raises is trying to make Star Wars physics real. To some degree, yes, Mark. It's just the continuity. So if something coming out of hyperspace is traveling at or near the speed of light and carries that momentum, then why is that not a weaponized tactic? And as far as
why isn't that consistent across the board?
And
everything else.
Right. And if that happens in A Lie of the Jedi, when things do break apart, then when it does, why does not happen with the Purgle when they do it? Or when somebody kicks out a thing of spice out of the back of their ship as they're fleeing, or any number of other things, right? So that's the consistency. So from a continuity standpoint, it's fine that they have done this here, but then it raises the questions of when the Purgle, and let me just bring that back up for anybody who came late, and let me move this out of the way.
Yeah. So the question ultimately comes down to this: it's not that you have to maintain real physics. It's just that whatever you establish as your logic in your story has to remain the same logic throughout the story. That's the whole point. Continuity requires movie logic or story logic to remain consistent, and when it's broken, to give the reason or the rule that allows it to be broken. So, like the example is, you can't do hyperspace ramming, let's say, but you can do it if there's a tracker employed. All right. So that would be an example of allowing hyperspace ramming to occur. And that would be my retcon. Or they gave the reason inside this is whenever you have this type of shield, a hyperspace ram can occur. I'm just saying that there's a rule that allows that to occur, and so, I mean, my only reason why I don't like that rule of the shield is because Hux reacts as if he knows what's happening, and so that's why I said the tracker, because if you use the tracker idea, it means Hux would know that that's a weakness, and he would realize that Admiral Holdo had figured it out, and to me that fixes everything.
Sure, and but that's again just trying to follow the question. The question is on the consistency bit. If the objects coming out of hyperspace in The Light of the Jedi are traveling at or near light speed, then why is it not in Rebels, where Purgles are dangerous? They wander into hyperspace lanes, crash into ships, and I lost more than one friend that way. So, A and B. So, A, you have hyperspace, something broke apart, was destroyed, and then comes out and causes mass damage. B, you have something in hyperspace that's destroyed, damaged. What happened? And are the two events similar? Different causes, but it should have, from a consistency standpoint, should have an effect, regardless of what the cause was. The event is an item in hyperspace, something in hyperspace is damaged and has no vectoring control, right?
I'm not saying, I wasn't arguing that against that. No. I was actually trying to say that the logic has to remain the same. That's
all I'm saying. I'm bringing it up for anybody that joined us late. Right?
And then whenever you have a break in that logic, you have to have a new rule introduced that explains the break in that logic.
Right. So that's the question: is between Light of the Jedi and Rebels, what changed? Right. Or is there any explanation that describes why you couldn't or don't, or why haven't others then employed this technique since? And especially here, and Dark Winter brought it up. Do you think this is not the Great Disaster? I think it is the Great Disaster, but at the same point, even in the book, they talk about worrying that it could be done on purpose, that this was an accident. They didn't think that they knew they could do it. And I don't know if here, right? It was coming across. They think that was an accident, that it happened there at the time. But in the book itself, it says, but could somebody do this on purpose?
Yeah.
And so and this happens hundreds of years before Rebels.
Yeah, 200 years or so.
Yeah. What has happened between this concern that they explicitly discuss and say Purgle, and certainly maybe they just hadn't run across it, because at the time of Light of the Jedi, they're still exploring. So maybe they haven't come across a place in the galaxy where Purgle exists. I don't know, but
so maybe I'm hard to believe that. But okay,
maybe at this exact point in time they don't have any interactions with Purgle, but we know between here and there that happens, and we know that this happened in history. So what do they do to prevent this from being a catastrophic type thing, even on accident, after this event?
Right.
And because they shut down hyperspace lanes because they were worried about it, right? We can't have stuff just breaking up and coming,
raining down across habitated systems.
Now, there is a big part here in the book. And again, there's a spoiler, a warning I've had up the whole show, but there is a place in the book where they stitch together tens of thousands of droids to do calculations and to figure out where things are going to exit from hyperspace. And so it's very possible that the technology that's being developed with tens of thousands of droids, in the way the technology works over time, will become more robust and smaller, so that it would take far less resources and be far more accurate, so that should a ship be broken apart by Purgle, they can predict where the exit points are, and each of the systems themselves can deal with the exiting remains prior to any devastation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has something to do with the way navicomputers work in the first place. I mean, it's as simple as this. I mean, in order for the navicomputers to work at the high speeds that they're talking about, and for every little mass shadow and everything like that, I mean, I was saying that effectively these have to be pretty super powerful quantum computers.
Yeah.
And because they have to not only predict the knowns, but they have to predict the unknowns. And right. And so that sounds crazy, but that's exactly what the capabilities of a quantum computer would be able to do, especially a super powerful one. And so they would say, based off the information of this one known and this one known, there are 15 unknowns, and this is what they would be. And so and effectively that's what you would have. So you would say, based off the breaking up of where this occurred, and this exit point of this one piece, this is where all the other exit points will be.
Yeah, they do figure that out. I know you're working your way through the book, but they figure that out, and they know precisely where all the pieces are going to come out. So, and that's towards the very end of the book. So, it is a technology that was first developed at this event, and that's what I'm saying is over time that technology would be improved, more accurate, and more accessible. Right. So that what you're saying, it could be built into systems everywhere.
Yeah, I think their systems already exist, and they just haven't employed it toward this in this endeavor. I think the same navigator that gets the ship through hyperspace could calculate this exact same thing.
Not in the book. Yeah. Not in Light of the Jedi. They answer. Right. They solved the problem, but it's done differently.
Right. I'm just saying that technically it could.
Oh, well, the only person that figured it out had to do it with tens of thousands of droids to figure it out. And there's another person that could figure it out, and she did it through computational analysis as well, apart from using the navigational computers. So while I understand your theory, in the book itself, they account for in the computational system they develop. And over time, I'm saying that would get built into Navicomputers and other systems throughout the galaxy and be commonplace.
In all honesty, it would be the same thing. It's just simply a change of some code.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But that's what they end up doing. That's what allows them to reopen the hyperspace lanes, because they know where it all is, and then they're able to get back in, so and able to get the pieces that are still coming out. And so if this happens at this point, over time, that will become very commonplace technology. And so if a Purgle runs into you, or you run into the Purgle, it's like a deer that hits you on the road. Did you hit the deer, or did the deer hit you? Who's at fault?
Again, it's about calculating knowns and unknowns, and having enough knowns to calculate those unknowns, and so that's really what it comes down to. But that doesn't change. A piece of something coming out of hyperspace onto a habitated world that doesn't have a system to counteract that. I mean, so if you're talking about Earth right now, having no technology to stop a piece flying out at light speed, striking the Earth, I mean, it doesn't matter what computational capabilities on the ship that struck it, it's still going to hit.
Right. Well, they if you can, so that became part of it. If you can anticipate prior to it happening, you're not tracking it, you're anticipating. And so when you're able to anticipate its exit point and velocity, you can then catch up to it in velocity and direction, so that you can terminate it prior to any impact.
Right. So, but it means you would have to know every incident.
Right. And that's what I'm saying.
You have to have people policing the hyperspace lanes.
Right. And if it becomes commonplace, it's part of all the systems on every ship, then if something like that were to happen, there would be enough data points, and everybody has that ability to track it because it's built into all the systems. Then it would be easier to know that there's a threat to your system and to your planet, and to have the strike team, response team in place prior to any damage being created.
You literally have to have, a hyperspace roadside assistance throughout the galaxy.
Well, each system, right? Each system would say, okay, we have to have an emergency response team, right? So you've got your emergency response team always on the ready, and anytime that you detected or were made aware of an incident like this, you would instantly respond and be ready for it when it came out.
Right. So it doesn't stop it from being used as a weapon.
Right. No, it wouldn't, but it would still allow you to deal with the Purgle. Right? Yeah. Those kind of incidents where a ship is destroyed. As far as dealing with the weaponization of it,
as long as it occurred in a fairly, like, probably a core or mid-rim world where they have the resources to do that.
Yeah. A Dark Winter have navigation buoy hyperspace exit points. Well, the point here is that those things were exiting not at just entrance and exit points. They were happening along the hyperspace lane, so it could happen anywhere.
You still calculate it, but yeah. So I mean, the point of it is that and we're going through and trying to figure the logic out. I mean, it's what we're doing. This is not readily apparent, and so we're basically trying to fill the gaps in story continuity and logic.
Well, I'm just saying, in the book itself, they deal with these trajectories, and they come up with a computational device to be able to predict what they're going to be, and then are able to position themselves there prior to the event happening, so that they can get the proper speed and trajectory in place to catch the.
And then we're trying to interpolate from that how they deal with these issues in the future. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
trying to fill the logic, is what we're trying.
exactly.
Trying to
And
get
then,
to.
and this is
And
book number one of an event that's going to go over many novels,
right.
and comics, and crossover things. So,
And again, they haven't talked about people doing it on purpose, even though it was mentioned. So I guess they're going to have to address that, because if they don't, then it becomes a big issue.
right, exactly. And they do know that there's a risk, and they presume that the risk is terminated at the end, and somebody says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Just because you think that you took care of the problem doesn't mean that you did take care of the problem. We need to be more sure. And so, and the book kind of ends with, what's going to happen.
Right.
So there's some pieces in there I've left out, but that's really the crux of it. They figure out that this happened accidentally. It could be done on purpose, but they think that all the people that know of it and could do it are taken care of, and now they've got to deal with it.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I guess they're going to have to address with it. I mean, otherwise, why have a villain, right? I mean, the villain probably figures out how to do it, and that's their point, right? That would be the at least the setup. If they're worried about it being weaponized, then I guess they'll weaponize it.
Right.
And so if they do weaponize it, then there's got to be a counter, and then we have to figure out if that counter is, and that technology is carried all the way over into the movies and into the stuff. So if they keep the consistency, then it's fine. But I think right now they still have some more to explain to keep the continuity together. Right now, I still think they have some gaps in their logic.
There's a big hole, but they've got a couple hundred years to fill it. And Dark Winter, how much of the freighter survived the collision? That's part of what they have to compute. They have to figure out how much of it has already exited, and they've basically got a giant space where they're bringing the parts to and trying to reassemble like a puzzle, like you would in forensics now. And they're trying to calculate how much mass is still in hyperspace. And with the other part you don't know is how, that mass that's in hyperspace, is it in 10 pieces or 10 million pieces?
Right.
And what's the risk of any of those objects coming out in any system that has inhabited peoples? So
yeah, I mean, I would have to think that their computing technology, I mean, just to have functional, pretty much almost completely sentient droids at this point in time, has got to be capable of looking at the impact on a particular piece of metal and going, okay, it hit with this impact, it was attached to this piece, this would cause this area to break like this, so now we know there's at least 10 pieces from this. Boom.
Yeah. Dark Winter asks, would the literal black box survive? Yes, it did, and that's where they get this sentence. They're rewatching the video off of the black box, the data that was assembled out of it, and this is page 282. So this is almost the end of the book, and this is where they see what actually happened. Up until this point, they're wondering, like, hyperspace isn't supposed to work this way. How did it happen? What happened? And there's all kinds of different theories that they have to work through. But this is the answer. They did get the black box, and they did find it.
So, like I said, my retcon on this whole thing would be have something to do with that strange red and gold turbulence.
Maybe.
And that's how I would make this very, very simplistic. So that meaning that this literally couldn't happen unless you have that red and gold turbulence.
Well, these paths become a problem,
right?
And the paths that the Nihil use are something that have to be addressed,
right?
And the path engines that are used to use the paths are a particular type of engine. It's not just a hyperdrive engine. Mm-hmm. It's tied to a path navigational system that the Nihil control. So if you've got 10,000 ships, all of them share the same navigational system. So they figure the computation up once, and they can then affect all of the path engines across the entire galaxy. Right. So if you're flying along in your Corvette and you've got a path engine, and all of a sudden the person operating the system wants to relocate you somewhere else, they push a button and you're gone. You have no control of that.
And very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Hey,
And,
well, I gotta call this
okay.
a day. We're going almost 2 hours, but
Okay. All right. I'll just answer a
but-
couple more questions, and we'll let you go, and then I'll go grab my lunch and get going as well. Thanks again.
Thank you. Please, everyone, come to the server and on Sunday so that we can do let people get a chance to read their fan fiction to an audience and provide some feedback. We love it, and we'd appreciate you showing up.
And I put a link to the Discord server in the description of the video here, so you can find it through there. And if you haven't, go check out Imagic Maker's YouTube channel, Reimagining Star Wars. There's a video you were currently working on regarding Ubisoft, right?
Yep, I'm really excited about it and what it means for fan fiction writers, not just about playing the game.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll let you go, and I'll just wrap up here at the end.
All right, may the force be with you, my friend.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. So I have some toys for unboxing. We're going to do that tomorrow, and I'll put that on the channel. I think I'm going to move away from doing those as recorded videos because of the intro. I don't like what YouTube does on the releases. So if I do record it, I'll play it in a live stream, and then we'll have some discussion afterwards. So that's how I think I'm going to move forward with those from here. And then I would like anybody who has finished the novel, Light of the Jedi, I would like to have a panel discussion where we get 3 or 4 of us together and we go through the novel and discuss things like we did here today. So I know, Gray, you're working on it. We have some other folks. I think Reefer Man Reviews was down to the last 50 pages or so. He's probably knocked those out. And if we can get several of us together to have a discussion on Light of the Jedi where we go through the book and talk about what we liked, didn't like, what could have been better, and where the story is going to go from here. I would love to do that deep dive, just like we did with The Mandalorian and some other Star Wars content as it's been coming. So look forward to doing that. If you're interested, please reach out to me. I put my contact information in the description as well, and we'll get something scheduled hopefully sooner than later. With all of that, I think that wraps us up. Let me just make sure. Dark Winter, what if the hyperdrives they've been using is derived from the reverse engineered tech that's wasn't done properly? Right. So that's a good point. Like the hyperdrives being used at Light of the Jedi are very basic, right? So a basic combustion engine, to use the analogy. And then over time, they figure out more efficiencies and more technology to make more horsepower, things like that, right? So hyperdrives used by the time we get to the prequel era are engineered differently with more technology, different technology. Yeah. It sounds more like the drive the Nile have used higher priority and the Republic version lacks safety precautions. Yeah, it has to do with their paths. And they can, this paths, it's a little hyperdrive or hyperspace tunnels, and they call them paths. And these path engines can jump them as far as maybe 100 meters or throughout a long distance. And they have no safeguards against impacting with other objects. So they start to use them as weapons, and this is another part of what's going to come up in the discussion, I'm sure. They start to then path engine some vehicles into other vehicles as little holdo maneuvers. But what happens is they're coming in and out of hyperspace. So they enter hyperspace 100 meters out, and then they land on the object out of hyperspace in the midst of the object itself. So it causes great devastation damage that way. So yeah, these path engines are interesting. I think they will tie into like the Holdo maneuver and into the Last Jedi, and that's going to be interesting how that goes. I have to find a copy. Just don't want a Kindle version. Don't have. Yeah, I got it on Kindle, and I also got it on audiobook from Public Library, so you can do that as well. Me too. Oh, great, good. We'll get you in on the discussion. I definitely would love to get you as part of our Light of the Jedi deep dive discussion panel. That's great. So we got Gray on board. Let's see. Sounds what the Tholians do in Star Trek, the original series. Oh, not sure. Not sure. I can't remember that. They're in Enterprise as well. Gray says, good. Gravity bombs. Yeah, gravity. It's inertia, right? So gravity bombs, inertia, whatever the case may be. If I understand what you're saying. All right. Well, folks, that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the support. I always appreciate it so much. And again, we'll have a toy unboxing review tomorrow. Another Mandalorian vintage collection figure, and I'm going to release that differently. We'll do the recorded bit up front, and then we will have an open discussion following. So thank you again, and until we see you next time, Merry Christmas, everybody. Bye-bye.